every member, elected member, would be aware that the council approved a change in the numbers of this committee. So as a result of that, and it predominantly stemmed from Phil Sharman retiring a couple of months ago. And as a result of that, Councillor Aaron Jeffreys and Councillor Kelly Roberts are no longer members of this committee. But as chair, can I convey my thanks to both those councillors for their support and participation during the time that they were members of the Governance and Audit Committee. And if that could be relayed back to them by those political parties that are represented at the meeting today, then please do so. But thanks to both of them. If we can move on to the agenda then, and ask any apologies for absence.
Yes, apologies from Councillor Adam Davis and also from Non Jenkins and Gillian Gillett.
So that means we've got no representatives from Audit Wales this afternoon. Okay, thank you. Can I have any disclosures of interests of any form, please?
Yes,
Councillor Leslie Walton.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
Yes, I'm assuming that I need to give personal only for item 6, as I'm Governor of Dylan Thomas.
Thank you. Councillor Mike White.
Yeah, agenda item 4, Chair. I'm a member of the Port Authority. I have filled in the appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
I think this is agenda item 6 is because I'm a Governor of Cloyes Primary School.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Yeah, Councillor Mike Lewis.
Yes, agenda item 4. I'm a member of the Port Health Authority as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other answer? Seen any more? Thank you so much for that. If we can turn to the minutes of the meeting of the 19th of July, we can take them page by page for accuracy. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8. If they're accurate in every shape and form, can I have some hands up to support their approval, please? I've got hands up in the room, hands up on the screen. Thank you, Jeremy. That's through. The next item on the agenda is the Internal Audit Monitoring Report for Q1. It's down for Simon Cockings, but Simon's on holiday in sunny Florida, I understand. So thank you, Nick, for attending on Simon's behalf. So if I can welcome you to the meeting and ask you to run us through the report, picking up any key points that you wish us to be aware of in this report, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chair. Simon's away, so I'm subbing in for him today. So as you mentioned, it's agenda item number 4, which I'm presenting today, is our internal audit monitoring report for Q1. And it's in the reports pack, and it covers page number 9 to 33. So the report basically shows the audits finalised and any other work undertaken by the section during the period the 1st of April to the 30th of June. It's information only report, so again I'll just go through the main points, and as usual happy to answer any questions at the end. So if members can go to section 2 at the top of page 10. So the audits finalised in the quarter. There were 12 audits. They are listed in Appendix 1, which also shows the level of assurance given at the end of the audit and the number of recommendations made and agreed. Appendix 2 provides a summary of the scope of the reviews finalised during that period. So 2.2 is an analysis of the assurance levels which have been issued, and there's a table below. So there were 5 with a high assurance, 5 with a substantial assurance, and 2 with a moderate assurance level. 2.3, a total of 120 audit recommendations were made. Management agreed to accept all of those recommendations, so that's 100% against our target of 95%. 2.4, as committee are aware, all recommendations are classified as either high risk, medium risk, low risk or good practice. And the table below shows the split of those 120 recommendations. So we've got 25 were medium risk, 79 low risk and 16 good practice. A couple of updates for committee. 2.7, which is the middle of page 11. So staff sickness in Q1 at the time of writing this report is still an issue, really. We've lost a total of 43 days. We're still one member of staff absent due to long-term sickness, and they continue to be supported by HR. 2.7, another development, we lost one of our senior auditors who's taken up another post in a neighbouring authority. So the post was ring-fenced to our experienced auditors in the team, and that was quickly and successfully filled. So the vacant auditor post then was advertised, interviews were held, and we've appointed, and that person is now in post and receiving training. So that's good news. 2.9, which is the just some figures on the plan to date as at the 30th of June. So as at the 30th of June, approximately 33% of the plan is either in progress or has been finalised. Moving on to 2.10, as stated earlier, 2 audit reports with a moderate assurance rating were issued in the quarter. The following table shows, gives a brief overview of the main areas that we've picked up. The first being Clydach Primary. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail here because I know we've got representatives from the school coming in the October committee. So they'll be able to give the committee members an update on the findings and the recommendations and where they are. Moving down to the top of page 14, which is 2.13. So the other moderate report, catering and cleaning team. I know we got representatives in today to speak to committee on the progress being made with that report. I believe it's Kelly Small, and that report will follow mine. Moving down to section 3, which is at the bottom of page 15. So the additional work that we've undertaken, in addition to the 12 audits that were finalised, we tested and verified 2 grants. And section 4, follow-ups completed in the quarter. 4.3, there was 1 audit with a moderate assurance level that was followed up, which was the destination lettings audit. So we completed the initial review back in September. The full follow-up was completed in June. We established that good progress had been made, addressing the issues identified with 5 of the 6 recommendations confirmed as fully implemented. There was 1 that still wasn't implemented, and it's in relation to plot 14. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I spoke to the manager yesterday, and I've been given assurances that there are some outstanding fees on that plot, and they are actively monitoring that and speaking with AR and the plot holder. So moving down to Appendix 1 on page 18, you can see the list of the 12 audits finalised, and Appendix 2 gives the 12 audits, the scopes of those reviews, and any other sort of key findings that we've picked up in those 12 audits. And lastly, Appendix 3, as mentioned earlier, it shows the status of the plan as at the 30th of June 23. Okay, and happy to answer any questions.
With regards to the findings around Clydach and catering and cleaning department, we've got representatives in those areas. Any questions, particularly with regards to that, I'd like to take further on in the agenda.
Sorry, Julie, can't
Okay.
hear you.
Very faint, Chair.
Sorry.
That's better, thanks.
Sorry. what I was just saying, because we've got representatives from catering and Clydach Primary School at the table today. Any queries we have specifically on Clydach and on the catering and cleaning, if we can wait until those reports come through rather than repeat the questions, I hope that will be okay with members around the table as well.
Chair, as Director of Education, I'm happy to provide some contextual information to the committee on Clydach Primary School, which may be useful ahead of October.
Okay then, but we'll pick that up at the time that you presenting. So with that in mind, if I can open up to questions, I can see Julie's hand up. Julie?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Simon, for presenting the comprehensive report. You've already mentioned that one of the senior auditors has left the team during the quarter. Further on in the Governance and Audit Committee papers, in the risk section, risk ID 335 states that an exit interview process was being established by June 2023 for difficult to fill posts. Now, I know you've already filled this post, so it might not be relevant, but I was wondering whether an exit interview was conducted with the senior auditor prior to leaving, so that any possible lessons could be learnt for remaining staff.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, an exit interview was conducted, and it was conducted by myself. Obviously we discussed various things within that interview. Obviously, I won't go into details, but not so much any lessons learned. Really, it's a standard process. But as I said, myself and Simon were quite confident that we had the expertise in the section to fill that post, and that's what we did.
Okay, thank you. And a second question on Appendix 3, if I could. On page 22, regional working, which is a new review, has been completed. So for future reports, could you ensure that the scope is updated for new reviews so that we can see what has been tested, please?
Yeah, we look at the scope, Julie, before we start any review. That's part of our sort of pre-audit requirements that we do in relation to the standards. So we look at all scopes and all audit programs before that gets underway. So yeah, you know, that's something that we do already.
Okay, thank you. But if you can just be updated on the report that we're given so we can see what has been tested.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this report for Nick, please? David?
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Nick. It was just picking up on page 20, under housing and public health at the top of that appendix. It mentions about the gas boiler servicing, and it mentions that obviously there are 500 properties already booked in out of the 1,200 outstanding. Do you have a timeline in regard to when that will be completed for the 1,200?
Thanks, David. Yeah, thanks, David. No, personally, we haven't been given a timeline. It's we did speak to the officers there. They are obviously playing catch up since COVID, and they are trying to undertake them as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But they didn't really give us a specific timeline on when they're going to be caught up with those inspections.
Okay, might be an idea to get maybe in this quarter or the next quarter, maybe if there's a progress.
Yeah, I can certainly ask for you, David, and see if we can get some response on that. Yeah,
it's just the risk around boiler servicing, and obviously we've had recent events around boilers malfunctioning and everything else.
Yeah, understandable, and I'll try and get some more information for you ready for the next committee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, David. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the same page, Nick, in regards to the permits and lettings of boats, we did have a previous incident a few years back where we had to bring the staff in because there was no record or railway records was kept regarding these boats being licensed and the fees being paid. Can we just have assurance that obviously this these matters have been sort of tightened up, and that we are on top of this this process, please. Because, you know, this is actually relating to the marina. The other issues we had were on the foreshore down on Mumbles.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, we have had assurances. It's without going into too much detail. It's not a straightforward process with some of the boats and who owns them and so on. But I know that the service is currently dealing with legal and other agencies to try and you know, get these all sorted. So yeah, we've had assurances. As I said, it's not straightforward, but you know, things are in place to try and get that sorted. So
Thank you. In addition to that, Nick, I think it's quite right that Mike's raised that, because I also had concerns around the non-compliance sizes of the sample that you've taken, which caused me some concern. And because you've reported substantial assurance, you would not normally follow this up. But can I formally request that you follow this up in 3 months, so that we can gain that level of assurance that Councillor Mike has raised? Because I think it's important that this doesn't go under the radar any longer.
yeah, thanks, Chair. We do follow up, obviously, with the substantial and the high ratings. We do follow up with an email to the manager to confirm that these actions are now implemented. But you know, for this one in particular, we did highlight it as a medium risk within the report and within the action plan. So you know, it was flagged, if you like. But I can certainly follow that up personally, you know, with the manager to see where we are with those boats.
Okay, that's fine. And similarly, I'd like to raise around the licence that should not have been reviewed in the context of paragraph 4.3. My question was, well, if it was issued in error, why couldn't it be revoked? Because there's clearly an issue with this individual not paying what the services has been provided. So again, if that could be followed up quite soon.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. I did speak to the manager yesterday about this one, and I think I did report earlier that they're keeping a close eye on any arrears. Again, not a straightforward matter, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but it is on their radar. They are looking at it closely, and I did speak to Jamie yesterday, Jamie Rubridge, and you know, it is being followed up closely. So I can certainly give you an update. I think I did give you an update yesterday, but I can give you some further updates, you know, going forward.
Thank you, Nick. If we put it on the action plan, Jeremy, and then you can update us as part of that action plan.
Yeah,
that's okay. Are there any other questions for Nick on this report? None, no hands up in the room. I'm not seeing any hands up the screen. Thank you for presenting that, Nick, and for taking the questions around it. So we'll move on now to agenda item 5, which is timely to invite Kelly Small to respond to the catering and cleaning critical audit report that Nick's mentioned earlier on. And if I could welcome you to go through the report that you presented. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I first give some apologies from Alison Koska, who was the team manager for the catering and cleaning service. Unfortunately, her mum has passed away unexpectedly, so the funeral is actually this afternoon. So it's actually been quite helpful for me as a relatively new head of service to write the report as well on behalf of the team, because I've picked up quite a lot of you know, sort of facts from that I can surely take forward for you. So I wanted to start really giving a bit of context for you about the catering and cleaning service in case you weren't aware. So it is quite a unique service within the council. It's very large. There's nearly 1,000 members of staff that work for that team. Most of them are sort of on you know, a few hours a day. There's quite a high staff turnover, quite high sickness levels, you know, that require cover because it is offered as a service level agreement to schools. So it's all about school buyback. So the service itself then is based within the individual schools, so that members of staff, you know, will be working in the catering and cleaning sections in the schools. So obviously, as a priority for the service, it is an operational service. They want to get children fed and the school clean. That, you know, that is the priority for the service. And particularly, you know, during COVID, that was one of the key priorities for them. It is, and unlike other sort of budget areas and areas of the council, it is a trade-in, you know, deals as a trade-in service as well. So it is slightly different there. They have had a restructure since the last audits that were undertaken. They were separate audits because they were a separate catering and cleaning service, and now they've been merged together and they've got a central admin team. So that was embedded in the service from last year. But I'm not trying to make, you know, excuses, you know, for them, obviously, because I'm taking this audit report very seriously. And obviously the action plan as well has been useful to be able to highlight the areas that we need to focus on. So if I just go through some areas in the report. So section 1.4, I've noted there is the area where, you know, all of the action plan recommendations have been implemented, apart from looking at the waivers for the 3 contracts that had exceeded the £10,000 throughout the year. So since writing the report, I've checked on those, and one of them, there is a waiver that is going through the system at the moment for sign off, and another 2 are in the act of being produced. And the 3 companies are companies that other areas of the council do already use under contract. So I think, you know, there was a sort of misunderstanding about what was needed, because these are cumulative areas of spend, but we'll make sure that's corrected going forward. That's repeated again a little bit under 1.5 in expenditure. But then if I look at the cash and credit income, we've noted that files have now been set up on a shared drive to make information available to whoever needs it. Under the petty cash, you know, there's been reminders out about keeping receipts for evidence, for VAT in particular. And then we've noted under the travel expenses section that all staff who do claim travel expenses have had a training session provided to them. Personnel records, under the section there, the checks are now in place to make sure everything is compliant. And under 1.6, I've mentioned there about the new team structure that was in place. As most of the staff in the service area do only work term time, so it meant they weren't available in August. So what we've done is arrange some bespoke training for them in September. And I'm going to be involved in that training, and the head of the funding information team make sure that we cover all the areas in the audit, and in particular procurement, to make sure everyone's aware of accounting instructions in particular. What we've said is we'll repeat that training annually, and I've asked for key messages from this audit to be shared in the newsletter that goes to all the staff in the service area, and I've asked for a reminder to go in every year as well, for those key points to go across to all staff. And those are the bits I wanted to highlight more than anything really in the report. I hope that's covered enough of the areas for you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you know, we've had an issue with procurement, especially within education, for quite a number of years now. As you know, the audit reports have been carried out. Procurement has been the main sort of high percentage level that have obviously been reported to us as a committee. I know that I've been banging the drum about having processes for worked on a procurement scrutiny panel for over 12 months, that to ensure that that all of our services are fully aware of procurement process, and especially within schools. The schools are responsible for the delegated budget, and not very large sums of money that we've got to deal with. But I know this as a governor of school for many years. And we got to make sure that when we are going out to a contract, that we know exactly what the process is, you know, on the rules, and especially with the limit of what we are allowed to spend as a school when we're entering into any, you know, spend and the procurement process. That's why I've asked, as part of one of the recommendations within our inquiry, was that we could have this training given to schools and hopefully perhaps a subcommittee of the school governing bodies, which will know perhaps the process of school building and procurement rules, to see if we could, get all joined up working. And I know that the head of procurement, Mr. Williams, was very keen to support all he could with any departments that felt that they needed additional support. But as they say, it is important that these procedures are rolled out, and schools and the services that we provide fully understand them, because at the end of the day, we are accountable. It is public money, and I would hope that by seeing these reports, the appropriate measures will be actually put in place. But as I say, my concern is that it's been going on for quite a while, and I thought that we might have got to grips with it by now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Kelly, for that. Going on from what Mike said, procurement seems to be a problem area, not only in catering, but, throughout the council, or has been anyway. But with regards to the figures here, and perhaps Nick can clarify as well, we've actually got, figures called cumulative. Are we talking about that's over the last year? Or, how long has this actually been going on?
Yeah, if I can come in there, Jeff, just quickly with the cumulative, we look at spend over the year. So if it's cumulative spend over the year that we're testing, over £10,000, then we pick that up then under CPRs.
So it could have been going on perhaps last year then, or whatever. So, with regards to this is under, shall we say, the council's umbrella, but there are schools that are standalone. They do their own catering. They got their own catering manager and so on. Do we actually check those people as well to see that they actually comply?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that maybe Kelly and Helen would be better placed to answer which schools have got their own catering, or they've procured their service out. I'm not sure. I think most of the primaries do have their own catering facilities in house, but
Yeah. I'm only asking that really with regards, even though these people are, say these schools are actually under the council's umbrella, that 140,000, which is cumulative, who actually procures? Is it procured from the main point, or is it procured from each school?
I'm not sure if Kelly be able to answer that one.
Yeah, Kelly, can I call you in?
Yeah, so there are two of our secondary schools that have their own in-house catering service, but all the other schools in Swansea work with our central catering team. So all the orders then for sort of food and supplies, etc., staffing, all go through our central catering and cleaning team then for those provisions. For cleaning, I would say probably about half of the secondary schools run their own service, and there's 2 primary schools, I believe, at the moment that run their own cleaning service.
Okay, so this admin team you actually got formed, will they actually carry out this process for every school now, other than the ones that are standalone?
They will. They'll do the procurement for schools, yeah, on behalf of schools.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, can I just say it's good to know that most of the, if not all bar one of the recommendations have been followed through. That's good. Just a point that you probably will cover in training anyway, but I think it's worth stressing that completing claims correctly isn't just a case of a requirement that's got to be done. I think it's also a safeguarding measure for the person making the claim, because if that claim is correctly completed, signed off by a line manager or whatever, it means that they would not be sort of suspect about any claims of fraud. So I think that's one of the points that you need to get across to staff. I know it's a pain in the butt filling in a form, but on the other hand, it covers the employee just as much as it covers the employer. Thank you.
Absolutely correct there, Councillor Bolton. Are there any other comments? No hands up in the room. I'm not seeing hands up on the screen. Thank you for that, Kelly, and for presenting. Obviously, it's the concern, sort of as chair I had, is the repeated recommendations that have been made. But in the context that it's a different structure now, would that mean that some of those repeated recommendations would only apply to one part of the service that was audited previously, or not?
Yeah, so obviously some of the repeated audit concerns there were from different parts of the service area. So what I want to make sure is we don't have any of them again. So that's why we're going to offer this training. So I'd like to see the next one now without any of those being repeated at all.
Okay, because it's obviously a concern when, as a governance and audit committee, we see repeated recommendations being made, and if it comes through another time, you know, we appreciate that and be so tolerant of seeing them, albeit that you've had a restructure and maybe different people there. Okay. Okay, but thank you for that, and I'm encouraged by the speed in which you've made those recommendations, and I'm sure other members are encouraged as well. If we can move over then to another one for internal audit, and that's the follow-up report. Just for members to be aware, I've asked Nick if he could speak to Simon when he returns from leave, if he can combine this follow-up report within the main report, because he does mention follow-up activity in the progress report. So I see this as an opportunity to make the reporting process more efficient in that way. So hopefully for the next time we'll have a combined report which will have no overlap or duplication. So go ahead, Nick, to go through this one, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've already emailed Simon on that point, and that shouldn't be too difficult to do for the next, well, it'll be the Q2 monitoring report now, whether that's October or November. Okay, so the next agenda item is agenda item number 6, which is our Q1 follow-up report. It's on page 46. The reports pack is pretty short and self-explanatory, really, but this report provides committee with the status of the recommendations made in those audits where the follow-ups have been undertaken in the quarter, and this allows committee to monitor and track the implementation of recommendations made by the section. So if committee members can go down to section 4, it's paragraph 4.6. Just make some comments there. So we've got a table there of the number of recommendations that we've received, and assurances from managers that they've now been well, they were accepted at the time of the review and now they've been implemented. So there were 8 medium risk, 36 low risk, and 9 good practice. Underneath is a table, breaks that down. And if we look at Appendix 1, it's a list of all the follow-ups that we've chased up and spoke to the managers with. And that's it, really, Chair. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Nick. Any questions around the table? No? Julie?
Thank you, Chair. Simon, following on from a point that the Chair has already made, the Governance and Audit Committee is being presented with repeat recommendations from reviews at an alarming rate. cast your mind back a couple of sessions ago to the fleet management report. So I'm wondering if you are in the process of amending the report as the chair has requested, whether you could also consider providing the committee with a report of all outstanding actions, perhaps for high and medium risk, so that we can pick up at an earlier stage the likes of fleet management where the recommendations haven't been actioned for a number of years. And hopefully that will shine a spotlight on them to minimise the risk of this going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. I wouldn't say alarming rates personally, but we are coming across some repeated recommendations in the moderate reports, and that's why they tend to be classified as moderate. But it's a difficult exercise that we're going to have to do because we haven't, the system that we're using doesn't log repeated recommendations as such. So it would have to be a manual process of going through, the audits that we've issued and finalized, and that may take some time. So the database we're using, we can't get that type of information off. But again, I can certainly discuss it with Simon, but we might have to put some sort of man hours into it manually to try and get that information together.
Perhaps I didn't explain myself clearly, and apologies for that. I didn't want a report of repeat recommendations. I wanted a report of recommendations not actioned, because hopefully then that will avoid the recommendations having to be repeated at the next audit review.
Right, yeah, we do, if there's any recommendations that haven't been actioned, we wouldn't put them in the report as complete. So where you've got that table for this quarter, all of the recommendations have been implemented and have been accepted by management. Now, in previous quarterly reports, we may have completed the follow-up, but we will list any recommendations that haven't been implemented, and we will have some narrative from the service to say why they haven't been done. Now, obviously, if it's a medium recommendation, then that won't be classed as complete. But if it's a low or good practice recommendation, we may accept the reason from the service to say why it hasn't been done, whether it's resources, whether it's down to the IT systems. So we do report them. And if it is a medium risk, then 99% of the time we won't accept that as done until it's actually done.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, thank you very much. But the information that Governance and Audit Committee is receiving is time bound to the quarter. So in table 4.6, it's just follow-up recommendations in the quarter. So what I was wondering was whether recommendations that haven't been implemented from previous quarters, whenever they've been made, if they still haven't been implemented, could we have a report of those? Perhaps you can take it back to Simon and discuss it with him.
Yeah, certainly, Julie. It's not a straightforward exercise to do, but I can certainly discuss it with Simon. Some services take longer to implement recommendations than others, and again, if it's due to IT systems or due to processes or staff resources, sometimes that could take 6 to 9 months to get implemented, possibly even longer. So we won't close the follow-up process for those audits, but as you said, reporting them maybe 6 or 9 months down the line that they still haven't been implemented, that there could be valid reasons why they haven't been implemented then.
Just to bring this to a close, can I just suggest that it go back to Simon to consider, but also be minded of when you get managers to agree a recommendation, the time date in which they say they do it should be a reasonable time limit. So if it's a high risk or medium risk, then I would expect that high risk one to be actioned within a reasonable amount of time, whether that's a month or whether it's 3 months. So the reports that you produce on audit recommendations, I fully understand what Julie's saying. It could be that some of those recommendations are not yet implemented because they didn't agree to do them for a number of months beyond. So I think it needs a bit more intelligence around that. But it's I think the point that's being made is we don't want to see any repeat recommendations, if at all possible. And Councillor Leslie Walton, can I invite you in, because you did have a hand up earlier on, I apology. apologise.
Yeah, no, that was all right. I'd misunderstood what Julie said, so I put my hand down. But now I've got a suggestion that could this not be included in the action tracker? Because that's exactly what this is. It's something that hasn't been resolved yet, which is what the action tracker, I think, is all about.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Okay, then, if
Yeah.
there are no other questions, you can take that back for Simon yourself to discuss further.
Yeah, certainly will, Chair.
And if there are no other comments on that, I've just got one, and that's for Ness. I think Ness is in the room with us as well. And that's on the external audit tracking development that you were looking at, Ness. Can you give us an update on that, please?
Yes, of course, Chair. Thank you. As mentioned before to committee, we are implementing a new performance management system called InPhase. And as part of that new system, we are working to ensure that we can include audit recommendations as part of the sort of monitoring arrangements in that system. It will take a little bit longer than we had anticipated to bring that on stream. And so in the meantime, what we have agreed to do is to have a spreadsheet for all of the recommendations made by external regulators, which we will monitor our progress at implementing any recommendations, and we can bring that to the audit committee for review. Probably if we said in November to look at the first 6 months of this year and any recommendations from last year too, so we can demonstrate to the committee the progress that we've made.
Excellent. Thank you, Ness, for that update. If there are no other questions, then no other hands up, then thank you, Nick, for presenting that report as well. With a couple of actions for you to take back to Simon.
Yeah, certainly will, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nick. Nick, if you need to go, I don't think there's anything else on the agenda. I'm minded of your pressures of work. Then you're more than welcome to leave the room if you wish. But if you want to stay, similarly, you stay.
Yeah, happy to stay, Chair. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. We can move on then to the Corporate Risk Overview 23-24. And I know Ness is in the room as well, but I don't know if Richard's going to present that.
Yes,
yeah,
Chair.
Richard, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So the report it starts on page 55 of your papers, and it provides an overview of corporate risk during the first quarter. You can see in paragraph 2.2 on page 56 that all the corporate risks were reviewed at least once during the quarter. The changes that did take place during the first quarter, you can see also in paragraph 2.2. So we have 4 red risks in the corporate risk register as at the end of quarter 1. 1 new risk was added, 2 were deactivated, no risks were de-escalated or escalated to the corporate risk register. We got 2 risks which had their RAG status changed, and there were also 2 risks that had their residual risk score changed during the quarter as well. Snapshot of the corporate risk register as at the end of quarter 1 is attached at Appendix A, which is on page 59, and we have a guide to the various headings within the appendix, which you can see in paragraph 2.3. And then finally in paragraph 3 on page 57, we note that a review of the Council's risk management and policy and framework has commenced, which started with training on risk management that was supplied to CMT and Cabinet by APSI. And we expect to complete the review by the end of the financial year, and the views of the committee in that process would be welcomed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It's very positive to see that you've got the Association for Public Service Excellence involved in that training process, and hopefully that that will improve the situation as we move forward. And I'm also pleased to see at 3.2 that the review will be complete at the end of 23 with implementation by March of 24, I understand. So if I can open up to any questions from members around the table or members in the room. Any questions for Julie?
Thank you, Chair. It is a positive move that APSI risk management training has been provided to Cabinet and CMT. So are there any plans to roll that out wider?
I think it's part of the review, Julie, that we will be looking at risk management training. Once we've done that review of the framework and the policy, I think it would be important that we roll that out to the responsible officers that are involved in managing risk, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I just be minded of the cost, if there's any cost with that training support, and whether there's opportunities for, you know, a training of the trainers, so to speak, so it's cascaded through a process as it goes through, because I wouldn't want to have a huge cost associated with this this training if it can be delivered by trained expertise within the house. Do you want to comment on that, Ness?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So first of all, to say that the APSI training that was arranged for Cabinet and CMT was actually funded from the WLGA Improvement Fund. So it's something that we organised with them. And absolutely any training that we then subsequently provide once we've done the review of the framework will be done in-house. And will be based on good practice, so that there won't be an additional cost to the authority.
Thank you, Ness.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, in regards to the risk ID 309 or 309 project, can I obviously thank the staff involved with this, because it has been sort of completed well in advance of the projected time. So I think that this is a very good working with all staff involved in making sure that this project has been implemented.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any other questions for Ness or Richard? Is Ben in the room?
No, not today, Chair. He's not
Okay.
available.
I've got
I am actually. I actually am. Sorry, Ness. I am.
Well done, Ben.
Listening in as best I can. So I am here, Chair, albeit in a sort of emergency capacity if needed.
Ben, thank you for coming in there, and I apologise in advance for not giving you notice. I was going to ask a question, but it caught my eye actually on your financial control risk ID 159. I noted the shift from February, March and April up to date from 25 to 20 to 25 through. Is there any specific reason why that occurred?
That's very eagle-eyed of you, and I did wonder if anyone was going to ask that. It's yes, very, very cool. It's been at a very high level for a period of time, and I relaxed ever so slightly in March because obviously Cabinet and Council resolved to set a budget. But the reality is, as you are all well aware, things are very, very grave in the public finances across the piece. And whilst there is nothing specific to Swansea that suddenly required me to consider putting it back up, it is partly as a result of the sort of general concern across the piece. So my anticipation, because when we've had discussions at CMT, one of the things that's come up that Richard will attest to is I always fail one of our internal control tests of how on earth can't you get the inherent risk down when even with all your mitigations, you're still at a red hot 25. And my position at the moment is simply because that's the reality of what we face. If I could go for 6 and 6 and 36, or say it was even more impending doom, I probably would. So it's right that you asked that question, and there's no need to apologise for asking the question. So I anticipate it will remain extremely high all the way through, and I may only temporarily reduce it as and when we get to a point of setting a budget. I may not, given how dire the outlook is more generally, and there are starting to be more and more pronouncements. It's often couched in tough choices. I hate the word tough choices. Colleagues will know it riles me under the skin because you know it's an easy platitude, isn't it? I think it will remain very, very elevated. It can only dip down temporarily, given literally every council and every public body in the land is almost literally, as soon as it's setting a budget, irrespective of what controls and mechanisms we put in to try and assure ourselves of how robust those assumptions are, that it will remain very, very elevated. So no need to apologise at all.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for explaining that. I think it's only right and proper for us to question the change in the financial profiling, because obviously, you know, that's key to the role of this committee as much as anything else. David, did I see a hand up?
Yes, you did, Chair. Thank you very much. It's just a general question, really, similar to the response to the last one on finance. We've got one on safeguarding there, which is number 153, and obviously a projected completion of March next year, but probably similar to the finance side with the pressures of workforce and demands and capacity and everything. What's the likelihood of that in regard to it being completed?
Is now Sir Richard able to reply?
Just a general observation, Chair, in the sense that the timescales are continually reviewed each month. So if there are any changes, then they will be made.
Okay. Am I right in thinking that we've got, is it David Hawes at the next meeting in October?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Dave Howes is, yeah. You could
Okay,
pick it up
thanks,
with
Chair.
Dave. You could pick it up with him, yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Julie, have you got a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question of Ben, so I don't know whether he's still there. But my question was that Swansea is predicting a net break even by 25-26. So in other words, a nil deficit. And I was wondering whether Ben would be able to provide us with any information as to how sensitive that projection is to transformation savings. Or perhaps Ness would be able to pick that up.
Well, I shall perhaps start. I am still here, Julie. I mean, I think you're picking up on some of the reporting across many authorities. Most authorities in Wales responded to that BBC survey. I'd start by saying at a generic level, it only balances on paper because it balances on paper. It's still a stronger position than many, because you'll have rightly noticed that many authorities didn't even indicate they could achieve that for the period of the MTFP in 24-25. It is extremely sensitive to the level of overall public financing and the overall level of revenue support grant and whether specific grants are maintained. The budget set for 23-24 was relatively easy in terms of we had a number of bits of firepower still available to us in terms of significant pension, employer pension savings, national insurance savings. It's not to say there weren't some significant service savings and some modest transformation savings, but we are much more exposed to that than I think the transformation stuff. Transformation will be an increasingly important part of the overall savings ask as inevitably budgets tighten. You will all be aware that settlements of 7-8% nominally for a couple of years, whilst feeling very good, I gave advice at Cabinet and Council and here and to scrutiny. They're not very good when inflation starts going above 10% or interest rates rocket or gas and energy bills treble. We have been very significantly insulated as a result of some of the decisions taken, but it's undoubtedly the case it is going to get incredibly difficult. Any of you have seen the media reporting today in terms of the health boards. It's going to be local government's turn next. We are still relatively well placed compared to England, it seems. I mean, I don't think it's just media focus, but I'll defer to Ness if there's anything particularly she wants to say on the transformation one. But my view is it's sensitive to a whole raft of things, and every treasurer in the land would say the vast majority of all of their woes and burdens and lack of money is decided as much by others as it is by themselves. You know, only a quarter of our core budget is spent from finance from council tax, but even setting a budget net at £500 million, we are immensely reliant on £400 million worth of specific grants and up to £100 million worth of income. So yes, they are extremely sensitive to the overall position. I wouldn't take huge comfort. I take some comfort for being a treasurer who was able to fill the return in properly, as it were, to have at least a balanced position for 24-25. But any treasurer would just say they're only items on paper. They've still all got to be followed through, and there are some undoubtedly, using my least favourite phrase, very tough choices for this council and every public body in the land, without doubt.
Thank you, Ben. Did you want to add at all to that now? So
well, no, absolutely. Just to sort of emphasise what Ben has said, you know, in terms of what our medium-term financial plan says, it's based on a set of assumptions. and so those assumptions are subject to change. What our indicative settlement ends up being may be different to what we're expecting. We don't know where inflation will be. We don't know where the pay award will be, etc. So all of those things factor into what our budget requirement will be. And at the moment, based on the assumptions that are in the MTFP, we have budget savings, including transformation savings, to offset that shortfall. But we'll have to keep monitoring the situation, and those assumptions may well change. And certainly the outlook and the public finance outlook is looking really serious. And that will not only potentially impact on the savings that we have to find, but also our ability to continue to find those savings through transformation. Because as we know, transformation can often require some upfront investment. And as the finances get tighter, that upfront investment also becomes harder to come by.
Thank you, Ness. Okay, then, if we can draw that to a close. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Ness, and you, Ben, as well. If we can move on now to the Education Directorate Internal Control Environment, and Helen Morgan-Rees, thank you for attending in person. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly Small, as Head of Service, the author of this report, is going to present the actual report itself. But I would wish, after Kelly speaks, to highlight 4 particular areas in reference to what was discussed in terms of item 4 on today's agenda in relation to a particular school.
Okay. Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the annual report that we present, and you will have had it in your pack. So if I could just highlight perhaps a few areas throughout the report. Just to note, under 1.1, education, is the highest recipient of the council's overall budget in cash terms. And then we have a chart then showing how that education budget is split between schools and central services, with obviously we see the bulk of it going out to schools in the delegated budget. So we do always give relative prioritisation of our budget to schools and prioritise that over the non-delegated central services. And we do have significant areas within our central services that are pupil demand-led, such as home to school transport and additional learning needs, which are very volatile budgets. Just noting again there as well in 1.2 that we do get a substantial amount of time-limited grants coming through at this point in the year. We're at about £23 million worth of income for schools in the centre and counting, because who knows what else we're going to get before the end of the financial year. And we've also got the capital programme as well, which is substantial as well, and obviously subject to inflationary pressures. And we've had to mitigate against them with some of our new build programmes by sort of de-scoping and rationalising the programme. So under 1.3, we're assuring you that we do have those clear strategies, objectives and linkages with corporate and other strategic plans. And schools then will have the strategic school development plans as well that will lay that out. Noting as well, there is a scheme of delegation that we have for schools as well that outlines everything that schools should be doing with their finances, and we also comply with all the rules and regulations that we've listed at the bottom there, and have our PFM, etc. So under 1.4, we do scrutinise schools' budget plans, the school improvement advisors, and through Ben's team, the accountancy staff and primary support officers will undertake that role. And if there are any schools that are looking at going into a deficit position, Ben will sanction that they can go into deficit as long as it's not more than 5% of their budget share, and that they've got a recovery plan to pay that back. I'm also noting there about the audit programme for schools, which does provide us with reassurance, and Helen said she'll mention one of our schools and the audit later on. When we do pick things up from the school audit reports, we do share that with other schools as well through our newsletter to make sure that that they get to know of things that they might need to look at themselves in their own schools. And 1.6, we've listed there specific aspects of our Directorate Internal Control and the groups that we've got available, and all the different forums that we can look at any issues that we might have. And section 2, then our risk management. We do identify risks at a number of levels. We identify them through particularly PFN, but we do have our strategic leads board, which is the 3 heads of service, director and some associate members, and our EdSILT meetings, which are all of our team managers and SLB together. We do use the corporate system under 2.2. And under 2.3, we're just noting the schools do undertake their own risk assessments, as are required. So they do a lot of these as sort of their bread and butter really for school trips, building work, health and safety. We do have a schools risks and issues meeting that meets monthly, and through that meeting we have a school profiler, so all relevant team managers, not just in education, but we have HR and other areas of the council involved as well, and it gives an opportunity to flag any risks and issues in individual schools and how we're going to support those schools. There are a number of other groups where school representatives can raise any risks and issues, and I've noted that in particular we do have a monthly meeting with the chairs of ACCA and SCASH, and they're the main primary and secondary school head teacher sort of forums, and they meet with heads of service and with the director. So we've noted there some common risks that have been picked up by schools, and what we've done sort of after the audit report on risk management is we've added some common risks across schools onto our own risk register as well, and put in some mitigation actions for those as well, and namely there perhaps the late renewal of DBS checks in schools, particularly where staff have been on maternity or sick leave, and the lack of strategic financial planning in a few of those schools. So if I go down to paragraph 2.6, so we do note it that there are some issues that we do have. There are growing expectations from particularly the Welsh Government on things that we have to deliver within our directorate and within schools, and quite often the funding doesn't necessarily sort of match the level of expectation that is there. We do have limited capacity and resilience across the whole directorate. We are a statutory service, and we are creaking a little bit, with the amount of work that we've got going on there. But so there are some particular areas to flag, and I think I've mentioned this in areas before, but home to school transport, where the actual contracts are placed by another directorate, and they charge it against our budget. So at the moment we are looking at quite a large overspend of around about £3 million on home to school transport that we have to balance off against our education directorate. So under section 3 then we have performance management and KPIs. We do have a service plan for each of our 3 heads of service that links up with corporate planning, and the director reports through to CMT every quarter on the progress of our service plans. So under 3.2, we note in there Abertawe 2028. You may have been aware of Abertawe 2023, which was our previous directorate plan, and we set that up in consultation with head teachers, and that shows our key priorities as a whole directorate, and it's that sort of bridge between our service plans for service areas and the corporate plan, and that's due for imminent launch. Under 3.3, just noting there decision making, SLB is our key conduit for making decisions, and then when those decisions have been made we can share across our EdSILT. Noting under 3.5, that the annual appraisals that everyone undertakes within the directorate, and under 3.6 that we do have the team meetings and one-to-ones as are required. And 3.7, the OPIs do align with our corporate service plans. So again, section 4, decision making, noting under 4.2, all the meetings and groups that we have do have terms of reference to ensure that we know how decisions are being made. And again, noting under 4.3 that the overall leadership and strategic governance is provided by our SLB. And under 4.5, we do have quite a few strategic groups that members of the directorate attend, a lot of partnership groups there, where we work with our stakeholders and work in partnership with schools in particular. So under 5 there, budget and resource management, just listing there the requirements that we work to. Just noting that for PFM, we do cover all of these areas, and we do also cover senior management absences in schools as well, because obviously we realise that that could be an area of risk for our schools. And I mentioned earlier, the school and central service audits do come to our PFM, and then we can sort of learn from them and share those risks amongst others. Noted under section 7, compliance with policies and rules, we do give periodic reminders to managers and team members, and I've mentioned earlier in a previous item about training opportunities, and we do share as much as we can through EdSilt. We do have training sessions given to schools, and section 7.3 there. We do offer that on a termly basis to all leadership staff in schools, and we offer it to governors. We've now started offering procurement training specifically to anybody in schools that wants it. So we've held one session of that, and now we've got another session planned.
Can I halt you there?
Yeah.
What's the take up to the training?
The first session was very well taken up in schools. It isn't a mandatory training session, but what we do, we keep an eye on who's attended, and if people haven't attended, the next time we have one, we give them an email to just to say, look, you might want to take note of this.
So it's not a mandatory.
It's not mandatory. No, I'm not sure if we can make it a mandatory training, because there is a certain training that head teachers have to undertake, but
okay,
that isn't one of them.
Thank you.
We do with the finance procurement training as well. If there is a new head teacher in a school or a new acting head teacher, we can offer them a bespoke session where we meet with just them potentially and their chair of governors, and we'll do that whenever is needed. Under 7.4 then, we've also provided training to schools and central staff on IR35, the HMRC tool, because we recognise that that could be an area of risk for us. So again, Audit have supported us with that and undertaken an audit of schools, and the main recommendations are listed there. What we've done is, again, for the schools that didn't attend IR35 training in the last 12 months, again, we'd be recommending they attend that next session, and we are going to be sharing the feedback from the audit report with all our schools now by the end of this month, so it's the start of the new academic year. And then we've got some programme and project assurance. We do have, I mentioned earlier, the capital programme. We have quality in education, a sustainable communities for learning programme, and there is rigorous scrutiny on that by Welsh Government officials, and we do follow the gateway review recommendations that were in place for that. Section 9, just listing our internal controls again, and 10 is our data security. Mentioned under 10.3 again, we do monitor at a lot of these things through our PFM. And again, under section 11, partnership, I've mentioned partnership and collaborative arrangements before with our meetings, but we do under 11.4 have partner areas then, which is the Regional School Improvement Service, and we do have a tight governance and risk management in place for that. And that was all I wanted to really highlight for that report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to 1.3 in terms of what we've said about PFM, and in direct relation really to what was mentioned in terms of our internal audit on catering and cleaning. What the head of service, Kelly Small, and I have recognised is over time we haven't been including our internal central services, internal audits in our monthly PFMs. That's been a gap, so we've identified that fault line for ourselves, and that's been included in the future. So that's really important. In relation to 1.4 then, in terms of the finance and business control of our schools, obviously we've heard that there were failings identified in the critical internal audit report of Clydach Primary, and those failings were identified almost a year ago to the day. So they were identified in a unique set of circumstances where we had to parachute an officer of the council into the school to take caretaking headship of that school while we secured interim leadership arrangements. So that happened in the first week back of the academic year. within 5 days, we commissioned internal audit to undertake a thorough finance and business audit of the school, because we had grave suspicions that there was loss of control really in terms of the school's finances. Subsequent to that, the school was inspected pretty quickly. We did share our concerns with external regulators. The school is in special measures currently. It went into special measures in a report published in November 2022. And I have written formally to the governing body, providing them with a warning letter in terms of recommendations that need to be improved, that are not maybe captured all in the Estin report, but certainly that letter makes reference to the finance failings that were identified and dealt with swiftly. So I think our response to that school was pretty quick in terms of identifying the risk and issue to the school. I've finished on that point, Chair. I've got two other points to make that are separate issues.
Finish and then. Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies, Chair. I think those of us online are struggling to hear. Yeah, I can see a few nodding.
Your mic is off.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, as I say, coming back, no, as I say, I'm surprised at why the school haven't got a finance subcommittee, in place, and they're obviously monitoring what the spend is with the school budget, and of course with the support of the school's primary support officer, that obviously goes in with the head teacher, sits on the head teacher and of senior management team, and working out on the spend within the areas of the spend and under the school's list. I think it's, not sure my memory serves me right, there's quite a list there from obviously teaching on teaching stuff all the way through. So I'm surprised at that. Is why the school doesn't seem to perhaps have a finance subcommittee in place, because I would have thought this would be part of the school's policy of the committees to have in place.
Thank you, Councillor White. You're correct to point out that in terms of internal control, and I'm pleased to report really that the governance and leadership of this particular school in question has been transformed. So we no longer have the same governance, the same leadership as we had a year ago. And the failings identified by the external regulator pointed very much towards leadership, and all of this is in the public domain.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Do you want to carry on then?
Thank you, Chair. So in relation to 2.3 then of this report, I think the committee has requested in the past the consideration around a school having a generic or general risk register. And I think the assurance we can give you is where appropriate risks are considered, and now we've incorporated it into our proceedings or procedures, I should say, within our corporate risk management. So these are now part of our directorate risks going forward. But indeed, it's very difficult for this committee to make a recommendation on something that's not mandatory, particularly at a time when we have workload impact assessments being considered at a national level by our trade unions. So asking schools to do more that they don't necessarily have to do at a time like this would be a very difficult ask of schools. So that's 2.3. And finally, in relation to the appendix where we reference our risks in education. So there's an amalgam there of corporate. We only have one corporate risk in education, the rest are directorate risks that are highlighted in today's report. But I would like to say that the corporate risk, there is one control measure currently that its potency really is weakening in terms of our engagement with schools. I mentioned there some consideration around workload impact assessment that has triggered action short of strike action across most of our primary schools in Swansea. So our level of engagement in terms of monitoring our schools has been impeded in recent months, and it's worth us pointing that out. And in the next risk register, we'll have to correct that control measure.
Thank you for highlighting that. That's something we need to keep a careful eye on if that's the case. Just a comment really from me regarding the Clydach issue. I was originally concerned why the internal audit were called in, but I'm reassured that you'd already been taking management action to ship someone in quite quickly to address all the problems. So the internal audit was just reinforcing and adding to the focus and the emphasis of what had gone wrong and the failures that had occurred. So thank you for clearing that up. Clearly a very sensitive area and a disappointing area really, and hopefully an unusual situation for one of the schools under the Swansea Council umbrella. So hopefully with the focus of yourself and Kelly and others moving forward on the recommendations to rectify the operational running of Clydach particularly. Any indication when they are likely to come out of the special measures?
Yeah, school and special measures tends to take between 18 months and 24 months to recover from that position. So one of the first recommendations was shoring up permanent leadership of that school. So currently we have an permanent acting head teacher leading the school, and things have settled. But there is intense monitoring both from an external regulator perspective and our own officers having regular checks and balances really with the school in terms of progress. And I can say that the external regulator is generally, I dare say use the word pleased, but I think we're heading in the right direction, especially that we are in a position to be able to recruit a new permanent head teacher. I'm happy to report that that is a key kind of pivotal action that needs to happen before it can improve.
I think that's encouraging news for us. The fact that it's going into the risk register, that the issue around the primary schools, I'm just aware that not to cross over what Iestyn and yourselves are doing around ensuring all the sort of weaknesses in the system have been addressed. I'm just wondering if you could give us an indication of when you think a report could come back to give us assurance that the school is operating as it should now.
Yeah, I would envisage within about a year's time, to be realistic, that would concur with the 24, well, less than 20, about 20 months hence from the time we identified failings. So I would envisage that to be in a year's time.
Okay. Can I ask elected members, is there a scrutiny committee that deals with this? And if so, I'm assuming there is, this is on the agenda, and maybe we can get assurance from the work of that scrutiny, because as chair of this committee, I'm minded not to duplicate or overlap into an area of scrutiny. So if there's a due scrutiny process being applied on this particular issue, then I'm happy to get assurance from that committee.
Chair, if I can respond, I don't think it's on the work programme yet for this municipal year, but I guess it should be. And given the seriousness really of it being in social measure, special measures, it will be in turn. There are other schools really that are being considered during this municipal year, but I think it needs a little bit more time to recover before it can go in front of scrutiny itself.
Can I ask then that going to the action plan, that the recommendation of this committee is that the matter be put on the table of the scrutiny committee that deals with educational issues, and then we can gain assurance from that process. Mike?
Can I just clarify, Chair, that the scrutiny committee education is separate through the other scrutiny SIT committee. That's separate. Scrutiny is scrutiny, and the committee, which is the other committee, is the which was the previous PDC then.
Well, whichever is the appropriate committee that it needs to go to.
Yes, it's the school's performance scrutiny panel.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? No? No? Any hands up? No. Can I thank you both very much? I know your time is precious, so I do appreciate you coming in, and it's much better to have that face-to-face engagement when you've got something as sensitive as this to deal with, but thank you so much. Okay, if we can move, that was for information as well. The next item in the agenda is the annual review of performance. And again, this is for noting and to make any recommendations. Before I invite Richard and Ness to go through this, can I just make the committee aware that the Strategic Governance Group received this report on the 25th of May and again on the 16th of August. And as you know, Councillor Leslie Walton is a representative on that Strategic Governance Group. I understand that the content of the report was discussed, but not necessarily this format. In addition to that, the Service Improvement, Regeneration and Finance Scrutiny Panel received this report in this format on the 5th of September 2023. So it's gone through a process of discussion, challenge, etc. And it's come before us today for any additional comments that we may want to make or any recommendations that we feel appropriate. So I just wanted to put it into that context because it's important, as I've said earlier, we recognise where it's been beforehand and what assurance that we can gain. And it's something I'm quite passionate to ensure that this committee doesn't waste any time by looking at things that other people have. So it's been through that process, but it doesn't stop us picking up any comments that we wish to make and any additional recommendations. Before I open up to let Ness and Richard, Leslie, is there anything I've missed? Because you're a representative, and I think you, Paxton, attend the service improvement. Okay. Leslie?
Only to say I haven't been able to attend a meeting to discuss this, but Richard will know because he acknowledged various comments I fed into it. So I'm assuming Richard's going to comment on those now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you both for that. Okay then, Richard, Ness, over to you both, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just introduce the report, just to clarify something as well. The format of the annual review performance extracts around section 5 that was shared in this format with the Strategic Governance Group on the 18th of May. And the entire report in its current format was shared with the Strategic Governance Group in August, as well as being shared with scrutiny on the 5th of September. So the format of it has been through that process. Just in terms of the report itself, it starts on page 113 of your papers. The report is coming here today, having been as discussed through the Strategic Governance Group and through scrutiny as well. Although we have done a number of these reports over the years, this is the second such report that, as we describe in the first paragraph of the Governance report, meets the performance duty established by Part 6 of the Local Government Elections Act 2021 to publish an annual self-assessment report. So in summary, the review describes the extent to which the Council is exercising its functions effectively and using its resources well in meeting its wellbeing objectives as they've been described in the corporate plan for that financial year. The review also fulfills the requirement to publish an annual wellbeing report as required by the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act by demonstrating the contribution our wellbeing objectives make to the national goals delivered through sustainable ways of working. The effectiveness of governance is also part of the performance duty of the Local Government Elections Act, but that's already assessed in the Council's annual governance statement, which is published in the Council Statement of Accounts. So we've signposted to that when referring to that particular aspect of the duty. The second paragraph of the Cumberland report on page 114 describes the methods and the approaches that we used to develop the review. So the review was written with reference to self-reflection tools, which are underpinned by other sources of evidence, and they were completed by lead directors or heads of service for each of the 6 wellbeing objectives, and then an overall assessment of progress and the prospects for improvement for each of those 6 wellbeing objectives were assessed using particular criteria, which you can see in paragraph 2.4 of the covering report. The outcome from this was then, as is set out in paragraph 2.5, reviewed and challenged by the Strategic Governance Group on the 24th of May and then again on the 16th of August. And that includes the corporate management team. And as you mentioned, Councillor Leslie Walton, who is the representative from the Governance and Audit Committee. The overall ratings that were determined from that process for 2022-2023 are summarised in paragraph 4.1 of the covering report on page 116. The third paragraph of the covering report on page 115 describes how the areas for improvement identified last year by Audit Wales and the Governance and Audit Committee have been addressed in this year's report. So this year's areas for improvement are also in addition to those which are set out within the corporate plan. So in terms of what was identified last year, the duplication in terms of reviewing the effectiveness of governance, we seek to resolve that by signposting to the annual governance statement and not duplicating what's in there. The length of the review was reduced and the format changed to try and make it more accessible to the general reader. The self-reflection tools that underpin the review were also revised, and we've used a consistent scoring criteria and applied that throughout the review. We've also got a new section in there to show the link between the performance and risk assessments, and we've tried to make the assessments in the review more analytical. We've included strengths and challenges and tried to have a more overall evaluative assessment for each of the individual wellbeing objectives. And we also sought to improve the consultation and engagement aspect of the review as well. And we trialled a number of digital citizens panels to undertake the face-to-face engagement with the public. You may remember that we had a very poor response last time in terms of undertaking the survey. So we've tried these panels, not just with the public, but also with other stakeholders as well, such as council staff and the trade unions. And overall, I think the feeling was that they were successful, and that's outlined in more detail in section 2 of the document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Do you want to add to anything Richard said, Ness, or are you happy for me to open up to questions?
I think it's probably worth just reflecting that, as Richard said at the start, this is the second year that we've done a self-assessment report and combined that with our annual review wellbeing report, and it's a difficult document to produce, given the number of elements that we're trying to address within it to meet our requirements under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, and we have reflected on last year's experience and the comments made by committee last year about the length of that document, which was actually 140 pages. Some of you may recall, and we've really worked hard to try and reduce that number and make the report more accessible to members of the public, while also ensuring that we are meeting the requirements of the Act. So it is perhaps inevitably somewhat of a clunky read, and we've done our best to take the reader through both the improvements that we've made in the year as a consequence of last year's self-assessment, as well as doing a self-assessment exercise on our performance during 22-23 in respect of our wellbeing objectives and in respect of our use of resources. I think, you know, as we said last year when we brought this report to you last year, it's always a work in progress. Last year was the first year. We've learned something from last year and we've tried to improve upon that this year. There are inevitably further improvements that we can make in future years, but we present this report to you in order to gain your comments on any further, as I say, improvements that we can make. Thank you.
Thank you, Naz. Okay, I'm sure everyone took some time to read this report. It is a public-facing document, and you know, I'm grateful for the efforts that have been made to reduce it in size, but it's a challenge, I think, and in the absence of a standard template and consistency across all local authorities, it's difficult to know what looks good and what doesn't look so good. But again, as I say, it's the second attempt, and I'm sure there will be a number of comments. So can I invite Councillor Leslie Walton to comment first, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things. Richard, and I know you responded to my email. Did the comments that I suggested, are they going to be able to be looked at and included? Just to explain before Richard answers, some of the things I was saying, I just wanted to make the wording come across a bit more encouraging to the lay reader, to make sure that they'd got a right to be involved in knowing what the council was doing. So most of it was along those things. The other practical suggestion I made, again, from the point of view of the lay reader, I thought the case studies were a very good idea, but maybe have a few more photos. I don't think it will matter too much if that means it's 2 or 3 pages longer. Illustrations always makes it, well, what's the phrase? Picture tells 1,000 words. You know, it just enhances the words and it gets the wording a bit clearer. But can I say I do think it is quite a good document in terms of all the actual requirements legally that you've got to achieve at the same time as trying to make it more readable. And we're getting there. I wouldn't say it was perfect, but it's pretty good on that score. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. Okay, Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. The self-assessment in section 1 on page 120 states that 56.4% of performance indicators showed improving or maintaining performance, and 69.4% either met or bettered their targets. But conversely, that means that at least 30% did not meet or better their targets. But when I looked at section 7, and bearing in mind that all of the challenges that have been highlighted in previous sections, and having regard to the fact that that this should be looking ahead to the medium and long term, it seemed to me that section 7 was extremely light in terms of improvements.
Could I answer that, Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, so as Ness mentioned, this is the second year in which we're doing the report. So we are still learning in terms of how we do this. But the other difference, I think, between the first year and the second year's report is that we had a lot of stuff in there around the governance side of things. And what the strategic governance group decided to do this year, reflecting on how the councils had addressed the performance duty, was instead to signpost to the annual governance statement, because there was a feeling that there was duplication there. So many of the recommendations that were there last year were related to that. So that may explain some of it. But I think it's something certainly that we can do between now and the report going to council, and we will review that section again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Oh, sorry. The second question, if I may, could you give this committee any assurance that the areas for continuous improvement that were identified in 21-22, and we've been given a progress update for 22-23, where those weren't completed during the year, will those continue to be monitored?
Yes, we will continue to monitor those.
Okay, and a very small point of detail. I know that the report has been reviewed several times, but I suspect it's for content rather than detail, and several misspellings and misplaced words have crept into the document, which I think is inevitable in a document of this size, but I think it does need a thorough proofreading before it is published.
Yes, Chair, if I just make a comment as well, partly on what Councillor Walton said as well. The report coming here today was the same report that went through to scrutiny on the 5th of September. So any changes to the report, we only have a very small window to make any changes before the report comes here today to the Governance and Audit Committee. But we will have an opportunity to make changes before the report goes to Council. So any issues like that, we will certainly pick them up and make sure that they're addressed before that report goes forward.
Thank you, Richard. Nes, do you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it just to say that in addition to the areas for improvement listed in this report, obviously the council also has all of the steps in the corporate plan for 23 to 28. So it should be looked at in the context of all of those actions too. And when we did the 21-22 report, we hadn't yet written and finalised our corporate plan for 23-28. So there were more actions in that year than there would be in this year, because of many of the actions that we're looking to take are already captured in our corporate plan.
Thank you, Nes. I think if we could ask then that, recognising, you know, what Julie's said, I think the section 7 as it is does look light on what needs to be done. And even if it just reflects that there are other documents need to be considered alongside this to make it complete, because at the moment it does look incomplete to me as well, because I know there's a lot more improvement areas around education, safeguarding and workforce that's in train that are not shown on section 7 but are shown elsewhere. So I think there needs to be a statement alongside that heading that, you know, there are further actions to be seen in other documents, if that's an easier way of capturing what needs to be captured in the short space of time that you may have. David, you've been waiting to speak.
It's okay. Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of observations on the whole document, really. One was the emphasis on partnership working. And looking through it, it seemed a bit light on that in regard to, you know, the partnerships that we have across the board. Including, I wondered how challenging it would be. As you know, some people have a 360-degree appraisal sometimes in regard to obtaining the view of others. Whether that could be something to think about in the future, which I think would give the document a lot of strength in regard to self-assessment if the views of other organisations are included in that. Again, it's only a consideration for the future, really. I think there's a lot of strength in doing that. A lot of people do benefit from that individually, but as an authority, it might be good to actually ask partners those 360-degree questions. Just a thought for the future, really. The final one, just to reiterate Councillor Walton's comments, I think the section on case studies is excellent. That's really good work. I think anything which highlights experience or experiential work with the council from whatever perspective, I think it's a very strong case for that. That's excellent. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Are there any further questions, Mike?
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the participation, was the opportunity given to frontline working staff that work at the depots to contribute towards the involvement and self-assessment on the view of how they felt the council was functioning?
Can I answer that, Chair?
Yeah.
Yep. So we basically promoted the staff engagement opportunities through the usual forums. We did it through StaffNet, and we also did it through the Chief Executive's blog, and we did it through Heads of Service as well. So we tried to provide as many people with an opportunity to attend if they wanted to as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Mike. just in addition to some of those comments that are made, I also noted that the Cabinet had received the performance report on the 20th of July, which is in a different format for obvious reasons, because it was a performance report rather than a self-assessment on performance. But there are figures in the Cabinet report that are aligned to some of the comments and figures in this self-assessment. And could I make a recommendation that you check that those figures are in harmony? Because I've tried to look at the figures earlier today to make sure that they're in line, and I can't see that they are, but that may be due to timing or the end of periods showing different figures. But if I can make a plea that that is looked at, because the Cabinet papers are in the public arena, and I'm sure a member of public would be quite happy to say you're reporting two different sets of figures for two different reasons. So to avoid any sort of suspicion from the public on that, I think it would be very beneficial to check those figures to make sure they are absolutely in line with what the Cabinet has been given. And also, again, if we could recommend that section 7 be enhanced to ensure that any documents you think are replacing or adding to the continued improvement, if that could be cross-referenced in that way. I don't think I had any more. I picked up one or two minor things with Ness, and I know she's going to speak with Richard, but they are minor. So rather than regurgitate them again, I'm confident that Ness will talk to Richard to get those changes made. But they are minor in nature, otherwise I would have gone through them at the meeting today. Are there any further questions on this paper? Again, I think it's improvement on what we had before, to repeat what Councillor Wharton has said. I think we get in there, and hopefully by the third iteration of this for next year, it'll look different again, and you know, maybe more public facing than it currently is. But well done for making the effort of reducing it by, you know, 2/3 of what the original size, or a third of what the original size was, and for endeavouring to make it user friendly. I would also ask you, Ness and Richard, to consider if you can get any public feedback once it's issued and in the public arena. If there's an opportunity to get feedback on, you know, can we do this any different? Would you like to see anything extra? I did like the case studies, you know, maybe the public would want to see more of that. Maybe the public would want to be engaged in its production on what the public perception is of what you're saying in this report. But I think that engagement would be quite interesting to have, I think. So if I can leave that with you. Not necessarily as a recommendation, but something to give thought to.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we've made recommendations there. So if we can move forward. It's going to council for approval at one point, so we haven't got to do anything more. To agenda item 10, which is the action tracker. I don't know if there's any comments on the tracker.
Yeah, Chair, just to highlight that number 17 from the 19th of July can be deleted, because that was circulated earlier this afternoon. It's on the annual complaints. And also number 70 from the 14th of December was just discussed, so that can be deleted as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can take those two out. Okay, thank you.
They can be marked as completed rather than deleted. Effectiveness of occupational health was due for September, or due to be completed by September by Rachel Daber. So hopefully we'll have that next month.
I think, Chair, that might need to come in November because I think it's going to CMT in October.
Okay. Okay, if you can confirm that for to Jeremy, and then we know what's happening with that. I'm not sure if there's anything else there. Any other questions on the action log? No. Okay, and the last item on the agenda is just the work plan, which is for information only, to make sure that we've got everything we were expecting, and that in doing so that we would be fulfilling the terms of reference that have been set to us as a committee. So if there are no further questions or comments, I can see a hand up. Ben?
Chair, on the work plan, you will note that the statement of accounts was identified as coming to the October audit committee. Regrettably, that is going to be deferred further. I continue to be in discussions with our external auditors. You will be aware we were late last year. I would rather not be this late, but I understand when Mr. Dong presented the final, you a bit like our external auditors would rather we do them right once. It is a little bit embarrassing, but it's the ongoing issue of trying to resolve to everyone's satisfaction those technical capital accounting entries you've heard before. Now we got back from a qualified opinion 2 years ago. It's part of a difficult journey, compounded by national tensions in terms of how assets are valued, further complicated by some further national developments. So that couldn't come until December. I also note I am down for December for my risk update, and I will endeavour to do that. It would be very poor form if I failed to meet the timeline, but I'm also conscious that all of these things do start to silt up. I am likely in December to also have a lastminute.com settlement, and I'm likely to be busy both on old year, forward year, and 3 or 4 years forward, plus current year. So things may be a little bit fraught for myself, but I'm not asking that you defer the second one, but please note the first one in terms of this statement of accounts is deferred, and just an early mea culpa that I might be struggling to give you the assurances you expect, but for now you should hold me to that second one. But just wanted to give you the courtesy of a heads up. They are going to be delayed. I'm not sure how long further they're going to be delayed. I am embarrassed about it. Wales is still in a very, very good position compared to England's well-documented delays, but I wouldn't want to mislead the committee in any way, shape or form. We are going regrettably to be one of the last again in Wales. But I wanted you to be aware of that in terms of work planning, Chair.
Thank you, Ben. Can I ask if Audit Wales are cooperating with what they need to be doing?
Yes, on this one, I would absolutely assure the committee that the issue is with me. It's our side as officers in terms of satisfying them. This is not a reflection on Audit Wales. Audit Wales do have their own staffing resource obligations and implications, but it would not be fair of me to suggest that this is caused by Audit Wales in any way, shape or form. They are cracking on with the Port Health Authority and the pension fund because those are both done and underway. It is entirely down to my side of things, Chair. So there is nothing I would wish the committee to think that Audit Wales have not done for us on this particular matter.
Okay. Have they given you a deadline by which you have to respond?
No, we continue to be in discussion and dialogue. They're aware of my likelihood of deferring to the end of October and then them calling the audit date in November. But it does mean that their resources will be deployed wherever they're available. The legal obligation is to publish, and we're well past the deadline. This is an authority that used to hit the end of May, so this is quite significant that we've missed it 2 years on the trot. The only obligation is to draw attention to it and publish that you are late, which I have done once and I've done a second time. It does become difficult when it comes to the matter of whole of government accounts for the Welsh government. So it's pretty much a rolling matter. We were
Something's gone.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I just broke up there at the end, but some authorities rolled over into the following year. It is very, very undesirable, and it's been commented on again nationally. around authorities that have ended up silted up several years in arrears. I anticipate we are likely to be talking about audit completed at the end of March, so a repeat of last year's performance, but the draft accounts will be presented to you as soon as they are available, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So you're asking for it to come in the December meeting?
The statement of accounts to the December meeting, yes.
And it's unlikely they'll be available before that.
It is unlikely. I mean, given that your next audit committee is the 25th of October, you're not scheduled for a November meeting, so December is the earliest they would be available. They are only in draft form. I do not think. I mean, we've already reported the revenue outturn. I would expect nothing of great excitement in them to require you to be considering an urgent meeting separately on them, Chair. So I think there's no need for them to come any earlier, and they're unlikely to hit they're not going to hit that October deadline given the lead-in time for committees.
Okay, I was just probing for the opportunity to meet as a special meeting if need be. But okay, we'll take it to December then and expect them in December. Okay, I think that concludes the business for today. Can I thank everybody for attending in person today, and also for those in the room that some of which are in Portugal and other sunny places. Feeling quite jealous here, but thank you all very much for your participation and your involvement. I do appreciate that very much, and thank you to our two visitors today as well. So I bring the meeting to a close.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Chair.